Welcome to the Spaghetti Wall podcast, where we dive into life.
Both the messy parts and the moments of joy, and everything in between. I'm Jason Wilcox, licensed clinical social worker.
And I'm Dr. Tansei Lee, a licensed clinical psychologist.
There's a saying that men expect women not to change when getting into a relationship, and women, they expect men to change. This is a problem, especially if you find yourself in this situation.
Yeah, so I think this topic comes up, and why we're talking about it today is I had a couple women share with me in therapy that, the number one issue that they have with their husbands is that they aren't doing what they said they would do, which is ultimately changing into a person. They're not doing something they're not used to, they don't want to do, they're not really interested in doing. Maybe they made a promise, but that's kind of the gripe that these individuals have with their husbands. And what their husbands complaint about them is that they've changed too much. So have you encountered some of these in your couples?
I see it all the time. It's interesting, though, that there's this thing, right, of if this person changes to who I idealize them to be, or I project that I want them to be, or what's the word, like I expect them to be. You had one earlier. It was a great word about, what their potential is. And so if you get caught in the mindset of, oh, I want this person to be what I see their potential to be, and you get in the game of wanting to change them, that's an issue. What you're doing is you're creating a pressure in the relationship, because people, they don't necessarily change, but they do. So basically what we're talking about here is that you can expect in a relationship, people will change, but it can damage the relationship if you try to change them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's very heartwarming because when we meet someone and we fall in love with them, right? Like we see all the best in a person. We see they're good, and then all of a sudden we're highlighting this, and this is what we're focused on. And then I think for me, I'm guilty of this, just imagining life together and thinking about the future. So no longer are we in this present moment. No longer are we focusing on us. We're focusing on our future. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. However, it does start to create tension and resentment when, your wife comes home and her hair is cut short and dyed red, and you're all like, whoa, Susan, what's happening, right? Or, your husband said he's going to fix that lawnmower and it's still there and it's not fixed. And you're like, oh my God, the grass is still so tall now, So we get into these resentments and we get into these, we get offended, we get disappointed, and we don't know how to talk about these feelings. But I feel like they do come from this expectation and this pressure. Instead of going, oh, my husband really just doesn't like doing this stuff. Let's figure out a different solution instead of waiting for him to want to do this stuff. And also realizing, oh, my wife has changed a lot. And how can I embrace that? Is there something I can allow her to do? Because if not,
even that
right?
thing, right? It's not that we're promoting allow her
Oh,
to do
yeah,
it. It's
right.
more
Allow
about, can
space
you
for her.
accept it, right? Can you accept the fact that this is an individual that wants to do the things they want to do and how they want to do them? It's really important to see the person for who they are in the moment that they are. Since people do change, this individual you met at the beginning, they may not be the person that would cut the hair and dye it red, or shave their hair off like I did, or grow a beard, right? This person may not have been this at the beginning, and now they are. Can you accept the fact that this is who they are now? Can you accept that they're trying life differently, that they're going to progress in different ways and alter who they are throughout life? So it's this idea of, can you grow together instead of trying to change the other person to form the way you want them to be?
Yeah, I also see that in the opposite way too, right? Like if someone has made mistakes that have harmed an individual in the marriage or in the partnership, sometimes people get stuck in the mindset as seeing their partner as bad or stuck in this way. And maybe this partner is trying and putting an effort of trying to change. So I see both. I see where you're dating and waiting for someone based on their potential and missing out on the present moment, or something has happened that has caused harm. And so you're kind of stuck in the past, right? And you're not taking that person and accepting them for them right now.
And that can be a huge problem as well, right? Some of the most extreme cases of this that I see is when someone cheats on someone. All right, they cheated. It's very disruptive, toxic to the relationship. A lot of times it ends a relationship, but not always. And some people choose to work through it, figure it out, and stay in the relationship. And so then the person that was cheated on can harbor all this anger and frustration and hurt towards the other person. This is important to recognize if you are feeling this way, is can you work through that? Can you accept that this is the person you're with, that they did take this action, and still be with them and love them and see them for all they are and appreciate the relationship still? Because if you can't, it's going to keep putting this pain into the relationship for both of you. So if you're stuck in that spot, always seek professional help. Always. That's the first step.
Yeah, I think it's helpful when these situations arise to have a objective third party, because then, you know, we don't want to get into the weeds of like, oh, he said he is changing, but I don't see that. Am I missing something? Is he making me feel like I'm crazy? Is she saying, she is changing and not changing? Is this gaslighting? I think it's always important to have a third party involved.
Yeah. And then let's be honest. If you do seek professional help and you're not able to get past this thing, then what do you do about it? It's an important conversation to have. I mean, because if you can't let it go, if you can't move to a healthy place and within the relationship, again, it's always going to be being held over your partner. And that doesn't feel good because they're going to be trying to move forward. They're going to be trying to grow and modify the way that they are and how they want to be in a relationship, because this is something that impacts both of you dramatically, differently, but dramatically. And so if you're trying to grow from this, but harbor all these hate and resentment and those kinds of things and can't move through it. And I want to reiterate that it's not that you move through it like, oh, this happened tomorrow, you're over it. This is a process. It takes time, and definitely I would always say professional help. But if you get to a place where you've spent the time, you put the effort, you've gotten the professional help, and you're still at this place where you're like, I can't let this go, then yeah, what do you do about it? Is this a place for you any longer?
I think it's a big disservice to both the individuals when you are unable to kind of face those truths and realities about your emotions and how you're feeling and how you've been impacted, right, about the past. And I think it's a disservice if we are living in a future that may or may never happen, and holding grudges or having contention in the relationship, and blaming, giving fault, like we don't have this home because you X, Y, and Z, we can't do this because of X, Y, and Z. These expectations and pressure, even though they come from a very um, heart-centered place of I see your potential and I want you to reach those potential, it's not fair to both of the parties because it keeps people stuck.
Mm-hmm. So again, what we're talking about is not putting the pressure on someone else to change, right? You can't make someone change the way you want them to be. It hinders relationships and harms them. And you can, but it's going to be harmful and hurtful to a relationship if you hold all this anger and hurt and resentment about past things. And again, doesn't mean that you don't have accountable conversations about it. It doesn't mean that you don't figure out ways to move forward that's going to be healthy. You do have those conversations. But holding that past or pushing a future, those things can put a pressure on a relationship instead of allowing a relationship to be this beautiful place that people can grow and be themselves. Like, it's really important for for me, right? In this relationship with Tan here, I feel like I can be me. I don't feel pressure to change into something I don't want to be. I don't feel anything about my past of her holding something against me. I get to just be me. And I do change in different ways. And my interests change, my paths change, the way I adopt and operate in life changes. And I feel the freedom that I can do that.
Hmm. Yeah, I think when we first met, it was like, there's no show here, Tan. Here, curtains down. Here's my cards. You either can deal with this and who I am and these parts of me, or you can't. And I was like, whoa, serious business here, guy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But then you in turn did the same for me.
Of
And you
course.
did say, here's I am too, right? And you answered openly and told me all about you. And that's an important piece if you're in the beginning of a relationship or you're thinking about getting into a serious relationship. It's important to take the blinders off and make sure you see the person for who they are. That you're not looking at someone and going, oh, I see this person, but I know I can change them to be this good guy because they're the bad guy right now. Or, they drink right now, but they're such a great person when they don't drink. So I know I can get them to stop drinking. This is changing someone. This isn't healthy. It's not
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah. I think a lot of couples, well, I think people in general, myself included, struggle with just being here, being in the present moment, and really assessing what's the cost when I am living in a future that may or may not exist, when I'm basing my happiness on someone's potential or my own potential, and there aren't actionable steps towards this potential. And we're just stuck in this place that we're both miserable or we're finding fault and blame towards each other. And that's where you really see, you know, the fighting and the problems coming up, because these things build and build and build until things explode. And then, round we go, we make promises, we identify the problems, people compromise, people say they are willing to do this or they won't do that. And then we're again living for this potential and for this change.
Yeah, a good way to think about it if you're trying to assess this is just look at it and identify, can you be true to yourself and operate the way that is true to yourself? And can your partner, without any repercussions, without resentments, without anger, can you both just be you without some expectation or pressure to change or not change? Can you just be you? If not, then you probably have some of these elements we're talking about in place where there is a pressure somewhere in here. And it'd be good to identify what is that? And can you get to a place of acceptance and allow the person to just be who they are? Now, I do get asked the question once in a while on this topic of people saying, well, yeah, but what if the person is doing something that is like a deal breaker for me and they're not changing and they don't want to change and I'm in this relationship with them, what do I do then? And so the answer I often give, I'm curious what answer you give, but the answer I often give is just, yeah, well, then you talk about it. And if it's really that big of a deal breaker, I mean, for example, like Tan doesn't do drugs, but if she did, that would be a deal breaker for me. So if she decided she wanted to start doing drugs, I would sit down and I would say, hey, this is something I'm not okay with in my relationship with you. So if this is something you want in your life and you're going to choose, then I'm going to need to step away from this relationship. And if you want prefer that you don't have the drugs and you have me in it, great, let's work on that. But I can't go that direction with you.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to also know our boundaries and our limits and our deal breakers. I know when I was young and I was dating, I was just figuring myself out. And I grew up in a community, a family where boundaries were very blurred. And so when I was entering dating life, it was like, oh, wow, like this, maybe I permitted behaviors that were disrespectful to me. Maybe I permitted behaviors that really blurred boundaries. And now reflecting back as someone who knows really good boundaries, someone who's practicing them, teaching them, knowing my limits and knowing my deal breakers, it took a lot of learning, but it also took a lot of introspection for myself. And then meeting like my soulmate, we were able to communicate this with each other.
Mm.
These are our deal breakers. This is what I'm not okay with. This is where I get triggered. This is my hurt. These are my wounds. Here's all my skeleton in the closet. Like just really having that time to yourself, to know yourself, I think is really important. But yeah, if it's a deal breaker, I mean, in my situation, you ask what do I do? In those moments and sessions, sometimes I merely reflect that to my client. For some reason, just hearing me say it back to them and reflect it back to them and just pausing, like sometimes they find their answer.
Yeah. So the skill there would be for you as a listener is maybe write it down and then read it back to yourself. Or again, see a professional, but a way to do it individually, you could write it down, read it, look at it, say it aloud, see what you think.
Yeah, my mamas hate it when I do this. My parents hate it when I do this. When they have, so here's an example. I hate to be like, very cisgender, but I have a mother who I'm seeing, and then they have a daughter, right? And then I just phrase it back to them. Hey, so if your daughter was in this situation, what would be the advice you give them? Or hey, if your girlfriend was in this situation, what would, I would say 90% of the people I see are female and women. So just this is where my content comes from. So they pause and they're like, oh my gosh, that answer is so clear to me when you ask me that about my friend or my aunt or my daughter. But for me, for some reason, I don't know, it feels different. It feels like I don't have that permission. I can't say those things or I can't put that boundary in there. And then we start the work.
But remember, a boundary isn't about, how do I put this? The boundary is about you for the most part, not about you necessarily trying to change this person to who they have to be. Yes, there's the caveat, like the example I gave of Tan was doing drugs, and I'm like, okay, I can't be in a relationship that's going this direction. I won't be, right? It's a boundary for me that I'm saying, hey, I'm not okay with it. And this is such a boundary that goes to such an extreme state that if you want to go that direction, you can go your way, I'm going to go my way. Right? That's the consequence of crossing the boundary. But boundaries, when we're setting them, there can be lots of even smaller boundaries around things. And those boundaries are about self, about what is okay, what feels good, and what doesn't feel good. And so it's important to be able to have those boundaries, talk about them in a non-judgmental, non-angry way of just saying this is what they are.
Yeah, I think a great example of a boundary that sometimes people find to be a deal breaker or a boundary that can move is like a partner watching porn. So I've had couples where, their partner is going to therapy for like a porn addiction or a sex addiction or something related to that. And in the partnership, it's caused one partner to feel very rejected, unwanted. And when they're working it through, a lot of times it might just be, want to work on this and I'm going to therapy for this. I'm going to these groups. I'm seeking help. And if I mess up, can we have a discussion?
Mm.
Right. And I think it varies. Some partners say no. If this is something you can't be without, I'm going to always feel hurt when you seek it out. And so, no, I can't be with you. Some partners go, I get it. Okay. And let's keep working on it. Right. So, I feel like that's one example.
Yeah, and some partners are okay with it, right? So, but it's just about the boundary. And the boundary isn't necessarily about, boundaries aren't, hey, I'm trying to change you, to be really clear. They're more about, I'm not okay with this in my relationship.
Hmm. Yeah. And I would say, my saying is like both things can exist when we talk about not making love conditional based on someone changing for you or not for you. So a lot of times we hear people say, if you really love me, you would do this. If you really care about me, you would try harder. And it's like, oh, well, how can you try harder? That's not measurable, right? And so it's difficult. And again, it leads people into this very stuck place.
Yeah. So, kind of wrapping up, what we're talking about here is if you are in the mindset of, I want to change my partner, or I am highly resentful of things way in the past and want them to somehow change the past that they can't change, these things are not helpful to a relationship. Boundaries can be helpful, seeking professional help can be helpful, but especially if you're getting in the beginnings of a relationship, really try to make sure you understand and know this person completely. All of it, right? The things that we might sometimes put in the buckets of good and bad, know all of it, because that's the whole person. And you accept that person? Is that the person you want to be with? Versus, I like the good, I don't like the bad, and I'm going to change them for the things I see as bad. That's not helpful. That's not healthy.
Hmm. And I think, I don't know if we talked about this specifically, Jason, but just to mention it, throw it in there, is acknowledging the second part of what we said at the beginning, that when your partner does change, whether you judge that as good or bad or different, it's important that we evaluate and acknowledge if we can live with these changes, right? And so it's not just like, okay, one partner is waiting for this partner to change because they're dating based on potential, and then this other partner is upset because their partner has changed, right? Like where um they're not so much focused on me. They started a training program, they're going to nursing school, they started a full-time job, they're now there's kids to take care of. Like when things do change and that starts to upset you or make you feel a certain way, it's important to evaluate, can I live with these changes? Or yeah, like your example, if I started doing drugs, would you be able to live with that? Right? You when we met, I'm not doing drugs, and like 5 years later I'm doing drugs or something like that. And so yeah, I think to add on, it's not about people changing or not changing. People will change, and I like what you said, but we are not the one to try to change them.
Right. We might set boundaries, and it's good to assess if this is the person, if you're in the beginning of a relationship, as someone that you accept for all they are, right? And people can always change. And in relationships, people do change. And if they change in a way that it makes the relationship go two different directions, then that's just something you assess and identify, is that, do you go in a different direction? And that is always an option. It's always an option to say, you know what, we have gotten to a point where we are just not really compatible. That's okay. It's okay to have that conversation, be honest and truthful, and identify, how do you want to move forward? But I like something that you were saying there a second ago, Tan, about how people changing. There's an example I was thinking of while you were talking about. For me, I'm not a big fan of bangs, right? Like the straight across. I think there's different kinds of bangs, but I'm talking about the ones that's like straight across kind of bangs.
I don't know what they're called, but yes, I had them when I was a kid.
Yeah. And so, like, if Tan ever got those, right, if she loved them and wanted to do it, would I have a feeling about it? I would. I would have a feeling of, I'm not a big fan. Would it change me on how I love her? No. Would I need her to change it back to the way that she had her hair before? No. If she likes it, awesome. Am I a fan? Yeah, but I'm okay with it because she
Well,
can be who
yeah.
she wants to be.
Naturally, though, you can be okay with it because naturally hair grows back. And so my bangs are not going to be permanent. Um,
But like a tattoo or something, right? Like
mhm.
if uh, we've talked about this before, I'm not a huge fan of tattoos. Um, and so if she got like some little tattoo right here or something, I may not be a big fan of it, but it wouldn't change how I feel about her. And I wouldn't need her to get rid of it. It would be okay. That's her choice, right? I don't need to change her. I don't need to change who she is. It's okay for her to be her. Um, but I can accept it, right? And that's the point. Is people will change. Can you be okay with them needing to be them?
Yeah. And I think on my side, I totally, you know, can accept that there's, yeah, some tattoos I've gotten that he's not a big fan of, and it's not conditional of whether he loves me or not. And
Yeah.
I don't do things to get his love. I don't know how to describe our vibe here, but yeah, it's like pretty independent. And our love, thankfully, I feel, does not feel conditional to me. Um, but I will say you had a strong reaction to eyebrows being tattooed.
Yes.
He's
But
like,
that's the
those
point,
are
right?
tattoo.
But
And I'm like, yes, it
that's
is.
the point is you could have. Even back then I never said not to, right?
Yeah.
I always said you can make that choice. And I would love her
Mhm.
still the same.
Mhm.
Would I like them? No, I am not a fan of those. I think they look creepy and I'm just not a big fan. So when she asked me, I did give her my honest opinion. I said, I would really rather you didn't. And still it's up to her. And if she did, that'd be fine.
Mhm.
I would have a feeling about it, absolutely, but my love for her wouldn't change. And if she needed to go that direction for her to be okay in her skin and for her to feel like needs to be her, then that is what it is.
Yeah, and it's really hard for people not to see it as the love feels very conditional. If you make this about how much I love you, or I make this about how much you love me. It's really hard for people not to feel that love is conditional when we approach it this way.
So hopefully what we're talking about makes sense. I do want to highlight one thing we talked about earlier, which is the nuclear option of saying, hey, if this doesn't change, I am going to end the relationship. Just a quick caveat to that. Don't ever use it unless you mean it. Don't ever use it unless you really are at that last straw. And if you are at that last straw, that is an okay time to use it, but it's because you're saying to this person, look, you can choose either path, but if you choose this path, I need to exit the relationship. But you got to be there. Don't use it any other time because then it's damaging. You'd only use it at that moment. Any other topics or ideas from you on this topic?
No, I think we have an upcoming one where we want to talk about this nuclear option of the ultimatum and how really to speak more about it and not within just a partnership, but like when parenting, how that's dangerous and not really conducive. But no.
Well, and a lot of these things in our different episodes, a lot of them you can translate over to parenting, just so you know. Like even this topic today, if you are trying to make your child be a mirror image of you or change your child to be someone you want them to be versus allowing them to be them, that's also damaging in a relationship. So a lot of these topics you can translate over to parenting. If you found this session helpful, consider sharing it with someone who might need it. And don't forget to subscribe for more real conversations about mental health, happiness, and how we keep going even when life gets tangled. Until next time, keep showing up, stay curious, and remember, the mess is the method.